My name is Sean Maroney. Welcome to International Focus's Global Diplomacy Dialogue. This is part of our e-talk series in which we have our guest today as Pierce Freelon. We're going to discuss music in the heart of cultural transitions. And I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors today, Steve Muir and Sarah Ford Muir, and also a special thanks to our partner this month, Sosta Cafe, located in downtown Raleigh. We also have joining us right now, Zara, and forgive me, Zara, but my best approximation of your surname is Grevorgia.
That's right.
Joining us at it's 4 p.m. our time over here in the Triangle in North Carolina, but it is 2 a.m. your time in Armenia. And what you all in the audience were just coming into is Pierce and Zara know each other from 2016. So Pierce, walk us through how you got involved with International Focus and the opportunity you had with IVLP back then.
Yeah, well, I was the host, inviting the delegation into a studio space that I run in Durham, North Carolina, called Black Space, and it's just a really fun, creative studio and sanctuary that I invited the crew into, and we had a great conversation and kind of talked about Durham, and that was my introduction to these wonderful artists who are in town for a bit, and it was nice to be the host. I really enjoyed that, and it's really good. I haven't seen you since then, 4 years ago, and it's really great.
Exactly.
So Zara, while we have you here, tell us about what it was like coming to North Carolina. What was your experience like with IVLP? And you and your group had the great opportunity to go to MoFest in Durham, where it allowed folks to experiment and get to know creators of different musical instruments and just a really creative space. What was your takeaway from that?
Well, actually, our experience in Durham was one of the best in our journey in the U.S., really. And I told about it to Layla because she made the program, and being able to participate in MOOC Festival was one of the amazing things, because we were four of us, and we were from culture industry, and it was interesting for us to be in such a festival, to understand how they make it, how they plan the festival, because also I am in Armenia, where we have a production company, and we are ourselves organizing concerts and inviting big names, especially in rock music, in rock sphere. And it was a big experience for me to understand how things are done in that part of the world, and how we can put that experience in our region.
And Pierce, what was your thoughts when you saw these visiting musicians and creative folks?
Well, I think, music, it's the biggest cliche in the world, but, music is the universal language. It's just the vibration that can bring people from different cultures together. So I felt that I was welcoming some friends into my home, and it's nice, like in the South, we have this thing, it's culture of hospitality, where if folks are coming in from out of town, you treat them like family, and you welcome them with open arms, you answer their questions, and you treat them well. So my recollection of the experience was these are some incredibly humble and talented creative folks who are coming to learn, and it was great to share with them.
And what's so great too is you said you hosted them at Black Space, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for those in our audience, Black Space is an interesting space, and that I want you to describe. But when I was going to the website to do a little more, since I physically can't go to it now because of COVID, but when I was researching it, I saw to become a sustainer, you promise, receive cosmic rewards. And so tell me about how the cosmic rewards work, because the work that you're doing there with the woke shops and just how it's bringing something to Durham and fleshing out part of the community is really fascinating to me.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's in 2016 we were just getting started, and you know, we've grown a lot since you were.
Were you at UNC with it then, or was it already in Durham, downtown Durham?
Yeah, so we opened the first studio in 2014 in Chapel Hill at the Teen Center across the street from UNC Chapel Hill, where I taught for many years. And in 2016, when MoogFest was going on, we had just opened our first Durham space. And, you know, Black Space, it's a teen center. It's a place where high school kids come and learn about music production, about videography and coding. And it's a creative space where, you know, our kids have produced albums and short documentary films and some narrative films, and have made apps and done all types of really cool stuff. So yeah, it's just a fun, creative dwelling for young teens to explore their creative voice.
And Zara, I know it's after 2 a.m. your time, so if you have to go, we appreciate your time and stopping in, and we're very glad to facilitate you being able to see Pierce after so many years again. But I have in parting with you, I have a question. If you look at America from where you are, and you see the violence in the streets and the anger and all of it is really, a lot of it is focused on racial equality or racial inequities, systemic racism. What do you take away from what you experienced being able to sit down with Pierce and see how Durham has these spaces? And is there a way that you can kind of compare your experience here, and what do you feel when you see news out of America right now?
No, I don't think I can compare my experience with what's happening now, but being there in America and being in different cities, we had the opportunity to understand what the US is about, to understand the people and feel how different they are from city to city, and to understand that our perception of the United States is something akin to a cliche, but actually it is very wide and it is very different. And we were able to see the problems among different cultural problems as well. And when coming back to Armenia, we had better understanding of what US is about and how different people are. And we can't just generalize everything under one name. And so my experience is quite different from what we see here. And we understand that the picture is quite different. And maybe it's not what it is in reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's well said. And we want to thank you for stopping by. I'm sure we'll have you on another episode, but we'll let you go back to your life now Saturday morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Yes, it was amazing to see you. Thanks. It was my pleasure to be here and have a chance to talk to you, and hope we'll have the chance to talk again sometime later. Thank you. And have a good day. Goodbye.
You too. Bye. Good night.
Good night. So that's what's been so beautiful. Out of COVID, you know, international focus, Pierce, we're all about face-to-face diplomacy, and it's hard to do that if you can't be face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
But through this, we've been able to do many reunions with guests and some of our friends overseas now. And so I'm glad we were able to make that possible for you.
Me too. Thank you.
Well, and I think it's important that we start on this because you're described as a hip hop soul electronic musician, a producer, a director, a teacher. You're all these things. You're a politician. You're an activist. So there's so many different ways that we can talk about your experiences and what you are working on, but I think Zara was a good way for us to get into a big component, especially one that our audience will really appreciate, and that is your Emmy Award-winning show with PBS, Beat Making Lab, because what you experienced with Zara here is something that you brought out of Chapel Hill, out of the Triangle, to other countries overseas, starting with the Democratic Republic of Congo. Describe that show for everyone watching.
Yeah, so Beat Making Lab started as a class at UNC in the music department, and a colleague of mine, Apple Juice Kid, along with I guess he was a professor at the time, he became the chair of the department, Dr. Mark Katz, endeavored to take this curriculum out of the classroom and into the community. And our first project was in the Congo, at a community center called Yole Africa. So initially we didn't have the vision or intention really to scale the program to what it became. It became this web series with PBS where we went all over the world, to Panama, Fiji, Ethiopia, Kenya, Haiti, all over the world. In its infancy, it was just this innovative hip hop curriculum that we wanted to offer to a community center in the Congo. And our partners at Yole Africa, Petna and Cherie and Daliko, run this amazing festival every summer called the Salam Kivu International Film Festival. And Salam means peace, Kivu is the region. And it was a film festival.
You were in Goma, right? In
Yep.
North Kivu province. Okay.
Yep. In Goma. So there, this guy Petna, who grew up in this area, in this community, he created this film festival where kids come from around the world, from around the country to screen their films and to work on projects. And there's like a music program and a dance team. And so we came from North Carolina with this curriculum and just did like a week and a half, 2 week long residency there. And it was so enriching because, the kids created their own beats. They wrote their own rhymes. We shot a music video for it, and then we just put it on YouTube, and it kind of went viral. PBS, got wind of what we were doing because we were written up in Good Magazine, and the rest is history. They were like, yo, let's create a web series out of this where you travel the world and continue to scale this work. But it all started in Congo, and we're really grateful to Dr. Cherie Daliko Rivers and Petna Daliko for helping us kickstart that movement.
Tell me about Martine over in Panama.
Oh yeah, Martine. So when we were in Portobello, Panama, which is a beautiful, beautiful community in the Colon region of Panama, and Martine was just an accordion player. Like, we saw him on the street, rocking his accordion, expanding and contracting and playing this instrument. And he was like a virtuoso. He couldn't have been 12 years old. And we were there during a festival called the Festival de los Diablos y Congos, which... You
really know how to set up your itinerary for international travel, because it coincides with a lot of festivals, and that's awesome.
Well, we learned from Goma that it's a great time. It's a great time for musicians to be in a community when a festival is happening. So this Festival de los Diablos y Congos is an interesting festival because in Panama, there's this history, there's this legacy of the Panama Canal, and there's this legacy of enslavement and colonization from the Spanish.
And it was very deadly building the canal.
Oh yeah, the canal has a brutal history, and there's even the indigenous Mayan population that was based there before the Spanish conquistadors came. So this Festival de los Diablos y Congos is this annual celebration that they do every other year during carnival season, where the Diablos represent the devils, which are the Spanish like slavers. They walk around with devil masks on, carrying whips they'll whip them at your feet when you walk by to represent like these slave drivers. And then the Congos, which, you know, Congo is like a slave term, ironically, same as Congo as in Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's a slang term for African people, for Black folks. And so the Congos, you know, they dress up in face paint, sometimes gold, sometimes black. And there's this battle between the slaveholders and the runaway escaped slaves. And so it's a really interesting community-wide ritual and performance, which basically tells the story of slavery and how these African people liberated themselves. It was like Harriet Tubman, you know, they liberated themselves from slavery and they were free. Cimorones, which means the maroons, the runaways. So anyway, we're in Panama during this festival, De los Diablos y Congos. People are wearing devil masks, people are wearing face paint. And here's Martine in the street rocking his accordion like nobody's business. He's a little Herbie Hancock, just like, and we were like, yo, this is dope. This little 12-year-old boy is a beast. So we took out our recording device, which we had brought because we were working at a studio there, and we recorded him playing the accordion, and we did a beat making challenge. We sent the sample. So in hip hop, for listeners who may not understand, in hip hop, we do something called sampling, which is when you take a little piece of a song and you flip it and rearrange it into a new piece of music. So, you know, a great example of that would be, I don't know, for my age, when I was growing up, there was a big song called Regulator by Warren G and Nate Dogg. And that the intro goes, anybody remember Regulator, you'll recognize that melody. It comes from a Bob James song because it was a jazz artist. And so a hip hop producer took that sample, you know, wove it into a beat, and then, you know, Warren G's rapping, so it's a completely new genre. So we had the same idea. We said, let's take this accordion playing 12-year-old kid and see if we can encourage other beat makers out there to sample this kid and make some music sampling his audio recording. And it was really dope. We got SoundCloud involved, and we did a beat making challenge using this sample, this accordion. And so every country we went to after Panama, the next was Senegal, we did a kora challenge. A kora is like a gorded, almost like a guitar that you play with both hands. You know, it's an instrument that's unique to Senegal. So we did a kora challenge in Senegal. We did a mbira in Ethiopia. And it just became like a thing, like, let's find a unique instrument that is native to this community and put it out there and see what people come up with when they sample this unique sounding instrument. So that was how we met Martine, and that was a great musical experiment and cultural exchange.
And it was interesting too, because I think you ran into some complication, I guess, for lack of a better term, when it was sampled and put into a trap music. One of the artists who did that, they used like a prayer or what? Walk me through how you kind of had a mini clash of cultures. I found that.
Sure. Yeah, so, you know, it's what's funny, that sounds all well and good in theory, like, hey, we're going to take this.
Very kumbaya, but in practice, humans are difficult, and especially, you know, different policies and cultures can clash without realizing it.
Yeah, without realizing it. We had the best of intentions. So this was not Martine. This was actually in Fiji, in Suva, Fiji. As I mentioned, we did a beat making challenge every country. So as soon as we land in a country where we don't know the music, we start looking around for unique sounds that are native to that community. And in Fiji, there is this long-standing tradition of vocal percussion and chanting. And we decided that in Fiji, our sample was going to be a chant. And so we heard this really beautiful, very visceral chant that was a traditional Fijian chant. We said, oh, that's cool. Let's sample that. And they were cool with it. We got their permission and they said, go for it. But then the beats that came out of that challenge were in like a dance music genre called Moombahton. And it was it was an inappropriate juxtaposition because the chant was actually a funeral dirge, and it was, while they were comfortable sharing it, they weren't comfortable hearing it in the context of a dance song. It would be like, like taking a song that's very solemn and very sad, and then turning it into something very fun. It was an inappropriate juxtaposition. And we didn't find that out until we shared with them what we created, and they were like, no, not cool. So we very, with, humility and deference to the mores and traditions of that instrument, of that song, we took it out and apologized, and we used a different chant that was a little more festive and a little more appropriate to dance to. But yeah, that's definitely an example of a time when our desire for cultural exchange kind of rubbed up against our ignorance of the cultural nuance that was required in that moment.
I'm glad you said nuance, because, well, if you're joining us, please make sure that you are on mute. I'm glad you said nuance because, for most Americans don't have a passport. And so when they think about traveling to another country, they don't want to try, some might not want to try the food because they'll find it different or maybe call it weird. And others might not want to go outside of their comfort zone in terms of the people they surround themselves with because of the fear of making a mistake and feeling out of place. And you and what you were doing with your crew and in that project, you went outside of your comfort zone, obviously. In fact, I don't even know if you have a comfort zone because you're a Renaissance man, truly. But you came up, and it would be as though going to a country and reaching for food with the wrong hand, and that's a no-no, or showing the soles of your feet in a situation, that's a no-no. You came across a problem that you didn't realize was going to happen, yet you were able to navigate yourself and everyone else out of it. I just think that speaks highly of the caliber and the nuance that your program was attempting to encapsulate.
Well, yeah, I think the main characteristic that will allow you to navigate scenarios that are unpredictable or that are complicated is empathy. I think that anyone who is willing to listen to people and feel them will be able to navigate challenges with grace. And for anyone out there who's scared of stepping into the unknown, I think that's where a lot of the interesting things in life happen. It's beautiful to step into a new environment and to taste a new thing, or to experience something where you don't know what the consequence will be. It's that is the very nature of being an artist. I think that a lot of what we do in jazz and in hip hop is improvise. And part of being a good improvisational artist, whether you're, a musician soloing on a piano, or whether you're an MC rapping, in hip hop we call an improvised rap a freestyle, when you're coming up with words on the spot. The best freestylers, the best improvisers are people who listen well and can respond to what the bass player and the drummer are doing accordingly, who can look around a room and rap about the things that they see and observe. And if somebody reacts to something, then that's an exchange. And, cultural exchange is a practice of improvisation. You don't know how it's going to go, but if you trust and you bring empathy into your practice, you'll turn out okay. Maybe you'll make some dope music or art in the process.
I would ask, because I've had this question sent to me in the lead up to today, I would ask who's your greatest influence, but I don't know if you're the type of person who could encapsulate it into one. So I'm going to ask one example that I would imagine, and that is introduce us to your Auntie Maya.
Ooh, Auntie Maya. Yeah, so Maya Angelou who passed away in 2014. I remember we were in the Dominican Republic at the time doing a beat making lab project there when we got the news of her transition. And it was so, at first it was devastating because I loved her so deeply and she was such a meaningful member of my family that it just really hurt. And then I had my computer with me and was able to dig up an interview that I had done with her a few years prior, where she recited a poem about basically, it's called A Pledge to Our Youth. It's a poem about how elders should be holding space for the younger generation. So she very much read the poem to me as my elder. This is my pledge to you. And when she passed away, I listened to that poem, and it was interesting because it was almost as if she was passing that responsibility on to me, for me now as an elder, to pass these things on to the generation behind me. It's like it felt almost like a passing of the baton. And in that poem, she calls for a few things. She says, we need clean and well-furnished schools, safe and non-threatening streets, employment which makes use of your talents but does not degrade your dignity. You're the best we have. You are all we have. You are what we have become. We pledge you our whole hearts. Like these are the words of this matriarch of poetry and Black art and activism. And yes, this is the woman who my sister Maya is named after. She was great, close friends with my grandmother. I felt, she was very much like a grandmother, an auntie, a great, great auntie to me. And it was, and now, almost 6, 7, 8 years later, I see the ways in which she was giving me a blueprint. She was giving me an instruction manual to help guide my steps as an artist activist in my own right, as I navigate the world as an inspiration and mentor and leader to others. So yeah, I'm grateful, very grateful to Auntie Maya Angelou and for all the things she taught me.
Those words are powerful, and I'm sorry for your loss and the loss of your family, how keenly you felt her passing. And hearing those words now, and in light of more arrests and more outrage, especially out of Kentucky, with Breonna Taylor and the police officers not being indicted there, the former detective being indicted by a grand jury, but for wanton endangerment in the first degree. So because of his actions, neighbors were threatened. There's a lot of anger, and there's still a lot of outrage, and there's still a lot of folks processing and not knowing what to do. How does your experience as an artist, an activist, and then knowing the folks that were important to you and their words to you, how do you make sense of all this? What is the blueprint that you'll tell your daughter as an elder after coming through this or experiencing it now? What do you as the elder say to the next generation?
Yeah, what I say, this is a different elder, a peer certainly of Auntie Maya's, was a giant in the world of dance, a Black man, and the founder of the African American Dance Ensemble, a brother named Baba Chuck Davis. And he was another mentor who was very close to me. And I remember just from a very young age, from elementary school, seeing him dance and seeing the presence and love and strength that he wielded, and the way he would walk into a room and you could just feel him. You could feel his energy reverberating and his spirit. He was a big guy. He was probably about 6'7", big hands, long arms. And so he was physically large.
Not a typical build for a dancer, right?
Yeah, well, and his spirit emanated with even more of a grandiose presence than his own, physical presence. So Baba Chuck was a mentor, and he said something that I think about often in moments when I'm trying to process grief and try to orient myself towards justice and what's right. And it's real simple: peace, love, respect for everybody. That's it. He used to host this event in Durham called Kwanzaa Fest, and he would open and close with that statement. And it's something that really sticks with me because, I mean, it's simple. It's almost like a chorus in a song: peace, love, respect for everybody. And uh, in some ways, when I hear Black Lives Matter, I hear it in the context of everyone deserves peace, everyone deserves respect, everyone deserves love. And when I see that those things aren't being extended to a Breonna Taylor or to a George Floyd or to a Sandra Bland, or need I go on? It's a unyielding list of names. Emmett Till, it goes back. To what extent are those human rights extended, to everyone? And when someone's not getting the respect that they deserve, when communities aren't experiencing the peace that it deserves, when then I have a problem with that. And but the approach in terms of it's not just advice that's relevant to the outer world, it's also relevant to the inner world, is that even though the criminal justice system doesn't give us the love and respect that we deserve, we know that we are worthy of those things. And we know in our hearts and in the way we treat others that we still need to uphold those as paramount principles that are deserving of all beings. The last part of it, peace, love, respect, that's the buildup. For everybody is kind of that's the alley-oop, boom. For everybody is the dunk. And so remembering to have love and empathy, even for folks who you disagree with, and even for folks who who are blinded by their privilege, we do need to, I think a part of love, for me, a part of love is accountability. So we're going to fight and bring our energy and enthusiasm to hold folks accountable, because that's a part of how we love them. And we're going to love ourselves in that process. And we're not going to get so overwhelmed that we forget our own resilience and beauty and joy. So yeah, there's a lot. Peace, love, respect for everybody, especially yourself. And as Black folks, part of what we're seeing in the streets is folks fighting for their respect and calling for accountability out of love for themselves, for Breonna Taylor and her family, and our country as a whole. Because and key part also for the people who killed Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, that the holding them accountable is also a loving gesture to them as well. Justice and fairness and doing what's right actually improves everyone. The tide, those loving tides raise all ships. And I think about for example, just to take it back, I think of enslavement as a metaphor. Obviously, the slaver, if we're going to go back to the Festival de los Diablos y Congos, the person who's doing the slave driving is also broken by the institution of slavery. They are engaged in a system that they did not create, which turns them into vicious agents of the state. And that's not a good place for them to be either. We want them to step out of the role as slave driver. We want police officer to step out of the role of slave catcher, of neck breaker, of arm twister, of, gun wielding, threat deliverer. That's not a good karmic space for them to be at either. And maybe they're in that position because, the education system failed them and they had to go to Iraq, and now they've got a skill set that's relevant to policing, and they just, they're caught up in the same system that we are. And when we liberate ourselves from that, go back to slavery, when we liberate as Black folks, when we liberate ourselves from enslavement, we are not just freeing ourselves, we are also freeing our oppressors from a life of putrid violence, of perpetual violence. They too are negatively impacted by that system of slavery. And I think the criminal justice system as it sits today, as a great grandchild of the systems of slavery and Jim Crow, those officers, those folks doing the killing are also harmed. And in fighting for justice for Breonna Taylor, we too are fighting for justice for her killers, for them to make amends and face the music for what they've done, so that we can heal. Because if that healing process doesn't happen, then both sides remain broken.
It's a vicious cycle that just repeats itself for generations.
It's a vicious cycle. So accountability is a gesture of love. Let's not forget that. So it is with an abundance of love for the victims and perpetrators who are also victims themselves of a system that exploits certainly Black people the most, but also working class white folks, people in the system. Like, there are very few winners in the system as it exists. And acknowledging that is about respect and love for all parties involved. And that's one of the things I've taken from Baba Chuck.
It's powerful. It's powerful. If you're just now joining us, you're joining our e-talk series of International Focus with Pierce Freelon, who is a teacher at UNC Chapel Hill, a community activist, a musician, a world traveler, and also a politician. You're the representative of Ward 3 on the Durham City Council right now. It's not your first hand at politics or entering that arena. And when you say peace, love, and respect for everybody, the words of your mentor, of your friend, it reminds me of your first big moment in entering politics when you ran for mayor of Durham so many years ago. Your platform was community, growth, youth, and love. I see a parallel between what you just finished talking about and what your platform at that time was. Walk us through where your head was then and where it is now.
Yes, so I ran for mayor in 2017, and that was the same year Baba Chuck passed away. It was a very transformative year. My dad also was just diagnosed with ALS the year prior, so it was a time of radical transformation in my life personally. And also Durham was at the precipice of a radical transformation. Our mayor, Mayor Bill Bell, who had just completed his 8th consecutive term, was retired.
Long time mayor, yeah.
Yeah, and Mayor Bell got me started, in politics.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 2004, he recommended me for a job working with a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that did voter registration and mobilization work called Voices for Working Families. And my boss was a guy named Pat Hanna, who I still am in contact with today and is a dear friend. and is a, you know, big fundraiser and political organizer in the Democratic Party. You know, Mayor Bell connected us. And that was my first experience doing community organizing work. Back in '04, I was
And that's before we saw President Barack Obama really make that term something like something that has real legs. I mean, that's what propelled him to the White House. Like you were on the cusp of that when he was figuring it out himself.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think President Obama's background as an organizer certainly brought to the general public's consciousness the idea of political organizing as a background that you know, is an admirable way to get into a life of service. But I mean, for me, that it's been long before Obama, like Ella Baker, you know, Ida B. Wells, Mary McLeod Bethune, like, woof.
Like you knew and respected what that meant long before.
Huey P. Newton was a political organizer. Angela Davis, like, come on, man. Harriet, like, Sojourner Truth. All of them were organizers. So yeah, Obama too, but he's like number 9,204,000. And that's when the rest of the world was like, oh, this organizer thing's pretty interesting. But for me, come on, man, like
they were the trailblazers. You're right.
Too many. So yeah, I you know, and I appreciate, but still, even so, I appreciate Mayor Bell for putting me in that position. So fast forward, that was '04. Fast forward to 2016. You know, Donald Trump is just elected president. You know, I'm in my feelings about that. Mayor Bell announces his retirement. What the heck? This guy was mayor when I was in high school. Like, I can't imagine a Durham without Mayor Bell at the helm. And there's this void. We don't know what's going to happen. And then I'm also feeling at this time, I'm feeling a little jaded and annoyed, disgusted, frustrated with the Democratic Party. I was like a Bernie guy, and you know, and you know, even the Electoral College, like the fact that Hillary smashed Trump by 2 million votes and didn't win, like it reminded me, like I was in high school, but I remember the Al Gore situation with Florida. It was
hanging chads, and then going to the Supreme Court.
It was maddening then, but now as an adult, like I was just so upset, and I was, what can we do? What can I do? How can I fight back? And the thing is, I didn't see myself reflected in anywhere in politics at the local, state, federal level. I didn't see any millennials running. This is before AOC. You know, she was part of that cohort in the midterms after Trump. So this was 2016, and I was just so frustrated, so jaded, and instead of acquiescing to my feelings of sadness and frustration, I said, well, I'm gonna do something about it. And I got with my creative and political organizing family, the members of Spirit House and you know, Black Workers for Justice, and the various organizers around North Carolina that I look up to, and started putting a platform together that was kind of crowdsourced from these grassroots spaces. And community growth, youth, and love were the answers to the things that were missing, what I felt, from politics and from public service in general. And I say that with so much respect and reverence for my elders, not just Mayor Bell, but Mayor Pro Tem Cora Cole McFadden, who's another Durham native and had been in city council for many years, Eddie Davis. These are my elders. I grew up looking up to these folks, but you know, they're now all three of them are in their 80s, you know. And in 2016, when I threw my hat in to run for mayor, the median age of our city council was like 60 something, 63, 62. The median age. We had these, what do you call that? Octorians, I don't know, 80-year-olds.
Octogenarians?
Octogenarians and septarians, 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds. And again, I mean.
Octogenarians, there we go.
Okay, there we go. And again, standing in the legacy of the John Lewises of the world, they came out of the civil rights movement.
Yep.
And when they were my age, they were out in the streets organizing with the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, getting political power, and they held it for about 40 years. And that's great, because I appreciate, they showed us, we learned so much from them. But where are the young legs, you know, the elder wisdom with the young legs that can move this thing forward? We were completely absent from the conversation. So running for mayor to me felt like the answer to so many questions. How do we get this intergenerational unity together? How do we prepare our youth for a life of service? How do we spread love as a political platform, not just as some ethereal like vibration, like, oh, peace and love, man. No, like, love is in my platform, because it's something that we're lacking in political spaces, especially at that time.
If anything, it's gotten worse. Yeah.
You know, well, it's gotten worse and it's gotten better. Like, on one hand, yeah, it's never been as politically divisive as it is now. On the other hand, we have the city of Asheville passing a reparations bill. Hello, could anyone have called that 4 years ago? Like serious changes in criminal justice system are on the cusp of radically transforming how we look at policing. Like, all this stuff is happening too. So I don't believe that it's all bad or hell in a handbasket. I'm abundantly optimistic about our future, because I know that we got it. Like, our generation and the Z's, I'm a millennial. These kids behind me that are looking up to me like, hey, Mr. Freelon, I'm like, y'all are about it. Y'all hit the streets. Your politics are solid. You're using social media. I see y'all. You're something special. Like, so now I'm on my Auntie Maya. I'm like, how can I put myself in the best position to create a context in which they can thrive and continue to run with the momentum, you know, now that I've got some power and some influence and now that I'm taking up some space. So I'm present to the privileged position that I'm in as a Durham City Council person. And I'm looking for opportunities everywhere to put my people on. I'm like, I'm in there. And what do I do with this privilege? How do I leverage it to bend the moral arc of the universe towards justice, you know, in the words of King? That's what I'm constantly looking for. And that's what I hope to do with my, you know, however long my career in politics lasts, who knows. But while I'm here, I'm trying to leverage the resources and the levers that I can reach to try to put especially young people in positions of leadership, of power, of influence, you know, and especially marginalized voices, women, specifically Black women, queer folks, trans folks. Like, how can I put them on with this little sliver of access that I have?
Well, I want to share that Susan G in the audience said Pierce Freelon is such a wise elder himself. Oh. So you're making an impression certainly on our audience today, and certainly in the community.
I'm 36. I don't know if I can don the title of elder yet, but let me just say back to that comment, any wisdom that you see or feel or hear in me is something I was told by an elder. Like, if you hear somebody like, "Ooh, that was dope," it probably came from Baba Chuck or Auntie Maya or John Hope Franklin or one of these people who's been planting seeds within me. I'm just the fertile soil, you know. I've been open to learning. And, you know, occasionally when you plant seeds in a vessel, you know, occasionally some fruit pops out, but I don't say that fruit is me. I'm just the soil that, you know, folks planted in. And if there's fruit popping out, it is the manifestation of their genius and love that they poured into me. So,
Well, let's talk about that for a second. You mentioned your father and his diagnosis with ALS. He passed along a message to you that you recorded, and I just felt I didn't want to share it because it just felt too personal, but I listened to it. And by all accounts, for those who don't know, Pierce's father is the late Philip Freelon, and he was the lead architect for the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. A big man, a powerful man, just powerful in voice and in dreams, and he recorded late in his battle a message to you, and it came out in a whisper. Would you mind sharing with us how it affected you and what he passed along to you? I would imagine the seed that the father plants in the vessel that is his child is something that will bear fruit.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. So, yeah, don't worry about playing that clip around me because I put it on my album. So there's a lot of people who've heard this. You could jump on Spotify right now, track 14, it's called Voice Memo, Phil Freelon. But yeah, I put it on my album, DAD. This is my children's music album. And
it just came out this summer.
Yeah, and my dad, that day was July, I'll never forget it. It was July 1st, 2019. He passed on the 9th. So 9 days before he passed, it was the day I got this tattoo, which is a pyramid, which was my dad's first logo of his first architecture business, the Freelon Group. Their first logo that he designed, with a pen and a ruler was a three-dimensional bird's eye view of a pyramid. I don't know if you can see it there.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so and I have a needle phobia, so for me to get a tattoo was a big deal. And that same day that I got the tattoo artist, a guy named Brandon Palmer, who I grew up with, his dad works at Self Help, Michael Palmer. His mom's a dentist here in Durham, Bull City Dentist, or Bull City Dental, rather. We grew up together, me and Brandon, and so he had brought his daughter over. My kids were there. My brother Maurice was there, not my biological brother, but spirit brother. Maurice Warnes was there with his kids. And we brought all the kids downstairs to my dad's bed. And, at that point, his voice was, a whisper. And he told the kids about art, the power of art, and how important it is for us as artists to listen and be perceptive, so that, we can create with purpose and kind of be able to receive wisdom, inspiration, whatever you want to call it, and to create from that and through that, that listening. And it's, whatever listening means for you, if it's prayer, if it's meditation, if it's yoga. Some people find like physical activities like jogging to be very meditative, spiritual practices. But for him, he was just like, I want you to listen and be perceptive, be able to receive, and then create. So that was the message. I put it on the album because, first of all, he was talking to kids, and so I thought, here's a children's music album. I would love for this to influence kids of all backgrounds, all around the world, who might pick up this album. And it was a really special moment, and today I had a conversation with my mom literally maybe 2 hours ago, where we were talking about this quote and talking about my dad's legacy. And my mom reminded me that they came up with a different acronym for ALS. ALS is like, Lou Gehrig's disease. It has some kind of complicated medical name that ALS is an acronym for.
Yeah, I can't help you there. You broke my brain on what an 80-year-old term is, so I can't help you on that.
Yeah, so the shorthand that they came up for ALS was A Love Supreme. A Love Supreme is the name of John Coltrane's classic album, and an album that my parents both really loved. And you know, my dad literally 2 hours ago talking on the phone with my mom, he said, "Oh yeah, dad passed away through a love supreme. It was not a debilitating neurodegenerative disease. It was a love supreme." And what we felt from him in that at that moment when he was talking to his grandchildren was a love supreme. I feel his presence all the time. Today, he came to visit me in the form of a mural. There's a 30-foot mural of my dad being painted in Durham somewhere that somebody tagged me in today. And, you know, he's a rainbow. It's like a Candy Carver, who's a local artist, painted it, and she paints with a bunch of vibrant, you know, beautiful colors. And I told my buddy today, I was like, "Oh, my dad is a beautiful rainbow butterfly. Like, you know, his presence is everywhere." And I'm so grateful for that because, you know, before his presence was confined to a body that was deteriorating through this disease. And now he's everywhere. He's abundant. He's present. I feel his presence all the time.
Do you feel his presence when you're with your young daughter and son?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, every lessons that he taught me, little eye gestures, you know, how dads can sometimes strike fear in your heart with their eyebrows. Like, and then I turn around like and crack up laughing because I'm like, that wasn't that bad, but they need to learn discipline. You know, like parenting is such an awesome part of my life. And I earned and learned that my love for parenting by watching my dad.
And not just your dad, but I mean, you mentioned your mother, Nina. She's a Grammy nominee in jazz. I mean, you are the product of two accomplished and amazing people. And I mean, in talking to your mother, I would imagine that she tells you frequently how proud she is of you.
Well, yeah, and you know, I would step back and expand that even more. You know, obviously, I'm the biological child of Phil and Nina Freelon, who themselves are the children of, you know, Alan and Elizabeth on dad's side, and of Queen Mother Frances Pierce and Charles on her side, and then, you know, that goes back and back for generations. But I am also the child of Omi Sade, Bernie Scott, of Mama Nia, of Baba Chuck, of Maya Angelou, you know, even people I haven't met. I'm the child of Bob Marley. I'm the child of Harriet Tubman. You know, I'm the child of John Hope Franklin. So many folks are my parents. And yeah, so I wouldn't limit it to those two. I'm the child of an entire community. And when you look at what those people have been able to accomplish in their own right, and what I've been able to take from them and pour into what I'm doing, there, you know, I see it almost like, you know, I'm standing in the front right now because I'm alive and in this vessel, and each one of them has a hand on my shoulder, on my back somewhere, you know, helping push and propel me forward. And that's wild. When you turn around behind you and Harriet's back there, like, go Pierce, you know, Baba Chuck, Auntie Maya, you know, she's not in a wheelchair anymore. She's free of her body, so she could push me with all the spiritual might she can muster. I'm like, bruh, like, I have everything I need to be successful. Look at who's behind me. You know, my dad's there for sure, but he ain't the only one. And I'm grateful for that. So my job now, while I'm here in this realm, is to be that boost to as many people as I can. And when I'm gone, my kids and some kids who ain't my kids, but are my kids, in the same way that I'm people's kids that I ain't their kid. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I'm following you.
My job is to propel them forward in this life and the next. So, you know, that's a full-time gig, and I'm working hard on it.
Well, how can, in closing, how can we help propel you forward? How can we support your work?
Ooh,
how can we find your album?
Yeah, well, here's how you can support my work. It's actually it has nothing to do with me. What you can do to support my work, which is to create more peace, love, and respect for everybody, literally has nothing to do with me. Find that person in your life who you can propel forward. Take out your phone right now, 21 participant listeners and whoever will be joining us on the internets later. Take your phone out right now. I'll wait. Okay. Find 3 people that you can send an affirming message to. Hey, I know we haven't talked in a few years. I just wanted to let you know I see you and appreciate you. I love you. Go write those 3 I prefer text messages. Maybe you want to write a handwritten note. Maybe you want to shoot an email. Maybe you want to make a phone call. Find 3 people you can love up on, and you love up on them right now. That's how you can help my work. Because when we spread that love out into the universe, it reverberates at a fractal rate. This is good closing. People don't understand fractals. Was one of the biggest blessings my dad ever gave me. It is the scaled relationship of things at their smallest and largest level. There's a film you can look up online called The Powers of 10. And it's starting with a couple on a blanket. It shows how when you zoom out by a factor of 10 and you keep zooming out, what you see is planets. You see our planet is nothing but a ball with a smaller ball spinning around it. You know, our solar system is a bigger ball with some smaller balls spinning around it. And then our galaxy is a big ball with a bunch of small balls spinning around it. Every scale up is the same. And then if you were to scale down to the atoms in our body, the particles that we can't even see, they are the exact same formation. It's an atom with some electrons spinning around it. At the largest possible scale of a galaxy or the smallest possible scale of an atom, you see the same relationship. And I think that love is the same way, because you calling your 3 people or texting your 3 people, that has a very small, on some scales, impact. You might be improving someone's day, it might make them happy, but I think that it has a fractal cosmic relationship as we scale up and we want to create a world of love. You know, it starts with an individual gesture that pans out to maybe a family, which scales out to a community, which scales out to a city or a state or a country or world or universe, you know.
A ripple effect turning into a tsunami.
Right, but it starts with a small gesture. It starts with literally with the phone call to someone to tell them how much you care about them. And yeah, so I think that's a good closing point. Fractals and the powers of 10 are a gift that my dad gave me. And what that means is if you make a shift within yourself, it can have cosmic reverberations that you have no idea how that tornado is going to come from that butterfly wing flutter, or that tsunami is going to come from that pebble in the ocean. So yeah, throw some pebbles out and spread some love around, and that is how you can help my work.
Well, in the fact that I gave you an opportunity to be selfish and promote yourself, and you turned it into a positive message like that, I want to, in turn, take the metaphor just one step further and apply it to you. So you're talking about scaled up balls flying around, and the smaller scale, still balls flying around. But even smaller than that, with like string theory, it's all vibrations.
Right.
And you and the work that you do, and just, we talked about this off the top, in music is the universal language. It's vibrations.
Yep.
You know, it's you're doing something amazing, and you just encapsulated what I believe is really International Focus's focus, its mission, and that is, you know, peace, love, respect for everybody. And thank you for your work and for sharing that.
Thank you.